Hi everyone, my name is Nachum Russell, or Russ to most of you because nobody can say my name. And this is my friend Sarah Quellhurst from Australia, somewhere in Australia. I can say Western Australia. That's the most that I know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I say it like I know, but it doesn't change anything to me of where that actually is.
I barely know. I hate it when people ask me. I'm like, I'm terrible with geography. Don't even ask me where I am.
Yeah, just the fact that I got Australia right is like, that's enough for me. And I actually got Western Australia, that's pushing it. Like, that's a lot to ask for.
I love it.
It's morning for you, so good morning.
Good morning. I've got my coffee. You probably don't even have a coffee or a tea. You're about ready for bed.
I had my last coffee for the day like an hour ago, which is a little late. I still had it. I was thinking I should have a coffee with you on the show because you're starting your day, but then I was like, it's going to be a little bit too late pushing it for me.
Well, I was hoping you would, but I'm like, I'm that person that can have coffee at night, but a lot of people are like, nah, it keeps me up. I'm like, no, it's good. Yeah. Have it anyway.
The truth is, I could drink coffee anytime and go to sleep a half hour later. The problem is when I first started doing the show, I always had a coffee next to me. And I always needed to pee in the middle of the show, and it wasn't good. So I started timing it better. I started timing it where it's like an hour beforehand so that I'm done with that. And then I just have my water when we actually chat.
I didn't even think of that. I'm like looking around. I'm like, where are the toilets? So hopefully I can hold it for an hour. We'll see how we go.
Is it cold by you? Like I see you're all bundled up.
It is. Like it's actually colder at my house than what it is here. Like at the moment near the water, because I've got the sun, it actually is quite nice. But it's like the winter here is different to Queensland. It just feels, I think it is the wind. It's the wind that's really cold, not so much, like it looks bright and sunny, but you know how that's deceiving. Like you go out and you're like, I think I need 3 jackets on. It's actually freezing. I've got like 2 pairs of socks on. No one can see, which is great.
It's always such a trip to me, the idea of like, we're talking to each other. It's winter for you. It's summer for me. It's morning for you. It's night to me. It's such a strange idea, but it's so cool that we still get to connect with it.
Even before you were like, before we went live, you were talking about, I've got this dog for the summer. I'm like, summer? It's not summer here yet. That's like November or December for us. I'm like, we still got to get through spring first. We're not even close to summer.
It's so strange. It's such a strange thing, but it's actually really cool too. Like, I think it's awesome that we know each other and we connected and we're on literally opposite ends of the world, like as opposite as it gets. And like everyone loves to shit on social media, but it's cool as hell because we got to connect through it. You know, we got to meet. We wouldn't have ever known each other if not for social media. I think it's amazing.
Well, it's like a lot of the other trainers as well. I kind of laugh because I'm that person that I always joke around to owners. I'm like, if I could, I would throw out my phone and get rid of it and be off tech and not have any of that. But then I've kind of learned through having a business, I'm like, I really love it. Like, I love the fact that we can all connect with people across the world that, like you were saying, we probably wouldn't before. Like, what would be a reason that I would get to chat to you if it wasn't through social media, through kind of a similar interest? Like, how else would we get in touch? There's so many people in the world that I think social media has a really cool way of like pulling people together. And I think if you've got that same personality that you're like, I'll reach out, I'll say hi, the right people will kind of come in and be attracted to that as well.
Yeah, I look at it as like this, as much as everyone hates these, has made the world so small that like we can be neighbors, like virtual neighbors, and know each other and all of that. And like, I think it's amazing. As much people who want to shit on it could shit on it, I see so much positivity in it because we get to connect. And I've met so many people. Like last week, I chatted with a trainer in Brazil.
I know.
It's such a cool idea that we're all this little community, international community of dog people. It's awesome.
And I don't know about you, but I've always had the belief that like family isn't just blood related. Like you can have family that are friends and, you know, dogs or other species, whatever it is. But I've always kind of had that belief that it's the connections that you make with people. And I feel like I've got family in different parts of the world. Sometimes some of the connections that I make, I'm like, I would literally chat to you more than I probably would a family member. Like, I know you more than a cousin. Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And even I think I think with social media, is he somersaulting again or she's somersaulting again on place?
Yeah. There's a storm here, so they're all a little bit cuckoo right now. So of course my dogs are the ones who are being cuckoo, not my clients' dogs. But
Of
yeah,
course.
Hendrick's cat.
It's like,
Thank you.
it's our collie as well. She knows like 2 days before a storm, her ears are up and she starts fretting. And it's like we do all the things, and it's just one of those things that it's like they know before you know, and it's like you can't possibly get in before the storm because they've already picked up on it. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry, but
I've been thinking a lot about the whole thunder and storm phobia that a ton of dogs have, because one of my dogs suffers from it a lot. And
yeah,
I think that I was just thinking about this recently, and I was talking to a couple of other trainers about it. And like a lot of people have dogs, that even trainers, who really struggle with this one. And I think that there's almost a natural thing for them to be nervous about it. And if we think about if an animal is actually living in the wild, when they feel a storm coming on, they're going to disappear. They go into their dens, they go find a place to disappear to. And it's a healthy phobia, right? It's a natural healthy phobia because it keeps them safe from the oncoming storm that can be dangerous to them. And I think now, because they live in homes with us, obviously we want to try to not have that fear and help them through it. But at the same time, we also have to understand it from their perspective of it's totally normal and natural, and they have no way to deal with it in a home environment, right? Unless we
exactly
give them something to do. But even so, for most dogs, a lot of dogs, I shouldn't say most, a lot of dogs, it's not enough. It's just because it's so ingrained in them, it's so strong.
And that, like you were saying, with dogs that, are in the wild or, are outside, it's like they've got that option to move away or find a den or find somewhere that could keep them safe. But dogs in their house, it's like it's not excusing certain behavior, but it makes sense that they would go to a corner or want to run and hide somewhere. And people will go, I mean, for the storm sort of situation, you do want to stop them from doing that in a sense of if you're also training other areas. But like you were saying, you can see why they're doing it. It's not irrational, where other behaviors that kind of come about, you're like, well, with a dog scared of a person or spooked at a plastic bag going by and there's no reason to be, it's like, well, I'm not going to let you flee away from that. Like, it's literally a plastic bag. But if a storm's coming in and it's that instinctual behavior to want to get away or hide, it's like I can actually get why you would want to do that. I don't want you to, but I can understand it, which I think helps with how you deal with it as well.
Yeah. And I think in general, there's a lot of behaviors that are kind of natural to dogs to do. And I guess there's like this balance of stopping it, because even if it's natural doesn't mean it's good in the environment that you live now. And also having some sense of understanding like where it comes from and why it's there to balance it out. And it's just something it's been on my mind recently a lot, specifically with the whole phobia thing, because it's normal to be scared of fireworks, let's say, right? And we might not, because we understand that it's this nice thing in the sky and it's cool to look at and the noise is just a part of it. But for an animal that doesn't get that, and they never will, because they're never going to be like, oh, that's beautiful, right? Like,
yeah, I love that. It's a party.
Yeah. So
exactly,
it's just an interesting thing that I've been thinking about, and now it's on my mind because like this crazy storm just came in like right before it's not even thundering out now. It's just like thick and heavy, and they can all feel it.
That's where it's scary. It's like where there's kind of no set noise, and it's this energy or this feel that you're like, I know that this is going to get bad later tonight. Like when it's raining or when it's storming and you can hear it, you're like, all right, I know what's going on. I know where it's coming from. You kind of get your bearings. But when it's like that eerie feeling where it's just like this muggy cloud of doom over you, you're like, I know something's coming. I don't know what's going on. The dogs have probably all picked up on what's going to happen, but I'm just sitting here like, well, I've got a tea, I've got a jacket, I'll be fine. Yeah. What's the worst that could happen? But following up from what you were saying, how you said you're kind of curious now with dogs that have this phobia of storms and, different weather change or lightning or fireworks, whatever it is. It would be interesting to like read a study on different parts of the world, because obviously where you are, I'm not sure what climate it really is. Like I said at the start, I'm terrible with geography and what goes on in what parts of the world, so don't ask me any of that. But, you know, areas that are more typically sunny like Australia and has pretty good weather, I wonder if you see a lot of that sort of behaviour. Like if the lack of frequency of storms and of lightning and of that sort of weather affects dogs differently to dogs that have it, you know, every day for a certain season or whatever it is. It would be interesting to know if it's better for dogs happening more regularly or if it's better for them just once, you know, once in a blue moon occasionally.
It would make sense that it's scarier when it's when it's less common, you know? It would make sense to be like that. But I also think that there are some dogs who are just like, it's just a part of who they are, and you're not going to train it out of them. You're just going to make them as comfortable as possible during it. I mean, I live in New York. It rains all the time here. You know, it rains all the time, and you don't know it, but it rains.
I feel like I do because I watch you on social media. I'm like, oh, the weather's a bit gloomy there. Oh, in the next video, it's a bit gloomy there. Oh, in the next video, it's a bit gloomy. Okay, maybe it is raining like every day over there.
New York weather is like, it will rain today. Tomorrow will be 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is.
That would just be like from one end to the other. Like you'd have, really heavy rain to the next day, bright and sunny. That would be... I imagine that would be hard. Like, I don't know if you do a lot of dog walking outside of the clients that you have, like with your board and trains and stuff. But I know for me, because one of the things that I do is dog walking, I'm glad that the weather is pretty stable, you know, all year round. I mean, a couple of months ago, because we only moved to Western Australia like the start of this year, a couple of months ago, it was pretty bad. It was like raining most days, but I'm one of those people that love the rain. Like I would go out and sit in the rain. I'm that crazy person that I walk in the rain. I'm like, oh, it's raining. Like, yay, let's go and dance in it. Not that far, but I just enjoy rain. Like I don't get spooked about it. I'm not like, oh, I just want to go inside and not do anything. But I think for the walking side of things, it's hard. If the weather's, you know, hit and miss all the time, and you've got to book in to like have dog walks and stuff, it's like you've got to cancel every couple of days if the weather's terrible, because it's like I'll walk in spitting rain. I'm not going to walk if it's downpouring and it's lightning outside. Like that's a little extreme for a 40-minute walk. I'm like, probably best just do some stuff in the house, put them on a treadmill, they'll be fine.
The clients that are your walking clients, are you training these dogs also, or it's just like a free walk type, like not free as in payment, but it's just like an unstructured walk? Or do you actually train these dogs how to walk nicely as part of that service?
Yep, spot on. So I do that. I think I had that realization pretty early on that I don't think I'll walk a dog if I'm not going to do any training, because it probably sounds super selfish, but I'm like, I want the dog to be trained. Even if you don't follow through with it, like I don't want to walk a dog that's pulling me. Like if your dog is reactive and that's why you're needing help walking them, or you're busy, you're a shift worker, which is a lot of the clients that I have here, I've noticed are FIFO, which is like fly in, fly out, or shift workers, you know, nurses, essential workers, that sort of thing. Or their dog has serious behavioral concerns and they can't get them out, like they pull or they've got really bad reactivity, whatever it is, then it's like, how do you not train that? Because I'm not going to allow it. I'm not going to be, I don't want to be pulled for 40 minutes on the walk. So that's, I think, I didn't really realize until I moved here, like the need for dog walkers is pretty huge that can do training. And that was something that I thought earlier on, like, what is something I would have loved? I think that's how my whole business came about. Like, what is something I would have loved to have with my dog? It's like, oh, those busy days, like someone that could walk my dog, but doesn't take me back from where I was going, like that can actually do some training at the same time. Because I think a lot of and this is not like a diss on any dog walker, you know, I have so much appreciation for dog walkers and, you know, anyone that's in the industry or not in the industry, but I think it can look appealing because it's like, oh, it's a very cheap price point. You know, you can walk a couple of dogs fairly cheap. If there's no training or anything, you could get anyone. You could literally have someone that is in high school or whatever that's just coming to walk your dog. They're not going to be aware of when your dog's loading on another dog and interrupting that. They're not going to be aware of, making sure the dog's not having any tension on the leash when they're walking. Whereas someone that's got a little bit of experience, or at least is mindful of what to look for, they're not going to encourage it. So you're at least not going to go backwards, even if you're not making huge progress forward. If it's little blocks of time that you're getting a dog walk, you're certainly not going backwards. And I think that was something that was important to me, that like if these owners are not going to be walking their dogs, which some of my clients, they literally can't, they're so busy, they'll get me in regularly to walk them. And it's like, well, if they're putting work, in with the dog in the house, I'm not then going to allow them to pull or bark or lunge at a dog outside. It's just going to set them, like, so much more backwards. Just like if the dog has no structure in the house, it's going to be very hard for me to have any influence over the dog outside, because they're allowed to be aroused and doing whatever they want in the house. Coming out for 40 minutes, that's not going to do much. You know what I mean? It's a very small pocket.
I think it's an awesome service to offer, both to your existing training clients and even to anyone, because, I mean, in New York City, we have tons of dog walkers, not specifically in my area because I'm more in like the suburb type area, but in like Manhattan and the city proper, Brooklyn, there's tons of dog walkers, and they'll walk like 10 dogs at a time. And they're all just all around this person, and it's a massive group of dogs, and there's no structure to it at all. And people like can get so much out of it if their dog is, and the dog will get so much more out of it too, if it's actually learning and they come back much more relaxed and much more tired and all of that. I think it's an awesome service to offer. I would love to do that one, but not now. I'm way too busy. When I can hire somebody, I'll hire someone to do that. But
I hear you. Well, I was even going to follow up with that. Like you were saying, dog walkers that walk, packs of dogs with, pardon me, no structure or anything. One of the dogs that I do walk, his owner is FIFO, and the partner and the child can't walk him. He's a huge staffy, very reactive, pulls a lot. He actually was being walked by a guy that would do like pack walks and everything with them, which was great. Like there was some level of structure in that they're obviously not pulling his arms off, but this dog was just getting riled up every time he was around them. He wasn't lunging or aggressive to the dogs. Like it was good for that side of stuff. But like the first time I met the owners, I just said to them, I'm like, it can seem appealing, oh, my dog will be around other dogs. It's like, but if they're not even stable by themselves first, which we saw as soon as we got him out by himself, he was so different. Like he had huge anxiety just being outside without having dogs there. And I think that was probably masked with having dogs around him all the time. He was always busy. And that was the reason that they reached out to me. They're like, it's good that he's getting around dogs, but we just realized that he wasn't even getting tired after the walk. It was like he came back and he'd never had a walk at all. And I'm like, I feel like that's a lot of dog owners. It's the same with the Mel that I walk. She's like, she never lays down. She's never tired. And I think after the first walk I did with her, she's like, wow, she actually like slept for 3 hours after that. I'm like, yeah.
You're working their minds.
The mind, that's the missing key. It's like you could literally go around the block, and most of the dogs I walk, I start at their house. I start in the driveway. I start on the road that they live, because most dogs, it's like the association just around that radius around from their house is so strong. Like, you walk out of it and they're almost like, oh, cool, where the hell are we? Like, what's going on? And you get back to their house and it's like, it's like, I don't know if you see that even with like some of the dogs that you work with, but.
Well, I don't do dog walking, except for I used to offer it as a service, but I stopped because I don't have any time in my day to be doing dog walks besides for the dogs that are with me. But I think in general, like I do pack walks sometimes with the dogs that are with me, right?
Yeah.
But obviously the very first thing that has to happen is each dog got to learn how to walk by themselves, right? And that's the part that so many people skip. I mean, I have people who ask me like a lot of times, how do I teach my dogs to walk. Like I have 3 dogs, I want them all to walk at once. But you're struggling with 3 reactive dogs, all reacting to each other, all going crazy, and you want them all to walk at once.
Yes.
Get control over each one separately, right? And then slowly build on it. And that's the part that people miss of all of these things, is they think that you jump straight to the end, right? There's all these steps to get to in general. Like you don't just jump straight to having results. You work for it and you take all the steps to get there to have what you want.
I 100% agree. And I think these were some of the things that I wasn't really aware of when I started the business, was like how other people view their dogs. Like I had ideas in my mind, you know what I mean? It's like the people research became so fascinating for me. Like, I don't know if you've found the same, but that's something that I've really loved through the whole process, is like when people fill out the form, I'm like, ooh, what have they said here? Ooh, what have they said there? Because that is what it's all about. It doesn't matter if their dog is reactive. Like, what do the owners think it is? How have they worded it? What do they think is the issue? What do they think will help it? Because that's going to be where you need to work on it. Yeah, sure, you can go out and stop the reactivity, but when you come home and bring that dog back, if the owner still believes it's aggression or, you know, something completely different, then you've kind of got to get everyone on the same page. It's the same with, like you were saying, I get it all the time, especially with the dog walking situation. It's like, my dog's reactive and is bit or whatever it is, goals, social around dogs, playing off leash with dogs. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is like, for most owners, like that is the number 10 goal. Like we've got so many things before then, like your dog doesn't even listen to you yet. You can't, off leash is so far off in the distance right now, let alone being around other dogs calmly. Like, I don't know where. I think somewhere along the lines we've somehow been led to believe that dogs should love every other dog and should love every other person. And I know I probably was a bit guilty of that. Like, don't dogs just love each other? Like, don't all dogs just love to play fetch? Don't dogs just come knowing how to do all these things? You mean we have to teach it? What?
I think that,
you know what I mean?
I think like media and like Hollywood and movies and all that stuff has completely destroyed the way everyone views dogs, right? I think that plays a big role into it. I definitely, when I got my first dog, I thought that he's going to want friends. He's going to want to play with other dogs. He's going to love people, right? Like it just made sense to me. I'd never had a second thought about it until he started hating dogs, hating people, and wanting nothing to do with any of that. And it was a big, it was a big learning experience for me to see that firsthand, because it makes total sense to think that your dog will want to go to a dog park, that your dog will love other dogs, all the things that we kind of talk about as like your dog doesn't need that, he might not like it, it might be bad for him. The average owner, myself included, until I actually got educated, it's normal to believe these things because it's the way we've been conditioned, right? And especially where I know for sure in America, and I'm assuming in Australia, it's probably the same. I think this is at this point a worldwide thing where dogs are little 4-legged humans, right? And they're supposed to like love the whole world, and everything is easy-go-lucky, and there's never going to be an issue, and all they need is love, and all of that whole mindset leads people down a very dangerous path, because you're just like us. You're going to get dogs that don't like people and don't like dogs and want to be left alone, or aren't just that social bubbly type, and you throw them into that situation and they have they have 2 choices: fight to get out of it, or just run away and go into fear. And then we wonder why our dogs are all messed up, and we kind of set them up for failure thinking that that's what they need, you know?
Exactly. And I think exactly what you were saying, it's not an America thing, it's not an Australia thing, it's a people thing. Like I don't know what it is, and like you were saying, it probably is the media and how we've somehow been conditioned to believe that dogs are human, or somewhere on that same spectrum of like, even when you think of I was thinking about this the other day, like think about the process of getting a dog. Like you adopt a dog, you can adopt children, there's so many parallels between I've had clients that, you know, maybe I don't know kind of how far to go with it, but maybe they're not wanting to have children or something like that. they will get a dog instead. Like that dog almost replaces a child. Like it's that serious of how if someone can't have children, or they're deciding not to go down that path, the dog is that family member for them. They are that third extra part of the family that it's like, well, we will give you all the love, we will give you all the toys, we will spoil you essentially, because we can't do that with anything else, you know? And it's pretty crazy how nowadays, with dogs being so much more domesticated, it's like we're seeing issues now. Even when I chat to my mum I always love chatting to my mum or other family members that are older, because my mum's quite a bit older. She had us when she was older. I like chatting to her about like her dad and what were the dogs like then, you know, things like that. And it's like, you know, they were outside, and, you know, she would say things like, if there were, sounds really harsh and it might upset people, but it's like the dog had an issue or something, it's like you just wouldn't see the dog. It was like, all right. And that was just the way that it was. Vice versa, it's like you weren't seeing the sort of issues you're seeing now. You weren't seeing severe separation anxiety. It's like, yeah, the dogs might bark or run up along the fence, but that's like the worst of it. Or maybe they got in a fight. Like Mum would say, they'd come out, walk us to the bus, have a bit of a scuffle with another dog. That was it.
I think there's so much to it. I mean, my dad tells me the same types of things about his childhood dog.
Yeah.
They lived in the house, but he's like, it had rules. It never went up to the second floor. We never had to tell it not to. It just knew. It would follow me to the school bus, and then it would walk home by itself and go back in the house. It was never on a leash. It would just be off leash its whole life and never had an issue. It would just walk next to us calmly, like part of the group. And I think there's a couple of things to that, because I think number one is obviously the cultural change of how we think about dogs is massively different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, again, as much as people don't like it and it might upset people, but the really bad dogs, like the dogs that bit people and stuff like that, they weren't going to a farm like everyone was told, right? And obviously, like, there's a lot of that can be avoided now, and we have training and we've learned a lot about dogs. And I'm not saying go kill every dog that's bad.
No.
Absolutely. But those dogs didn't exist as much. And I think the third thing that's really not being spoken about enough is I think genetics are fucked up now. Like, I think dogs' genetics are destroyed for the most part. And we have the few really good breeders, and like, props to them for keeping genetics healthy. And there are people who really care about this stuff. But in general, the average dog, you're getting it from a shelter or a backyard breeder or a pet store or just whatever. And these dogs' genetics are all messed up. And then on top of that, we throw in like early spay and neuter that nobody wants to talk about, right?
They were the two things that I wanted to chat to you about, but keep going.
And I think all of these things combined, you have a mess, right? It's not just training, and it's this horrible mess of nonsense, and nobody understands dogs' health anymore. And there's so much mixed in with it that it only makes sense that we are going to have a ton of behavioral issues, bad dogs, reactive dogs. Like, it's a really messy mess, and
it is
untangling all these messes, like, to try to actually make sense of it.
Exactly. And to give you an idea, like, because I used to, like, how I got Lush was I used to volunteer at a German Shepherd rescue.
Lush, okay, I was going to say Lush is your shepherd.
Yeah, he's my shepherd. He is my wild child. Like, he is my dog that got me into it. But it's funny. It's like everything that you said was like, you could have the best owner. You could have the most dedicated owner that wants to do a good job, that, you know, is in a position where they're able to dedicate the time, love, patience, all of that to bringing a dog into their family. But it's like all those things that you said, it's like before you even get the dog, you're battling with where am I getting them from? You know, what are their genetics? Like, that's all pre-you, you know, like before they're even in your house. They're two things that it's out of your control. Obviously, like nutrition and health, like that starts to become part of, you know, what you can start to control as well by helping out with that. But like, if you're getting dogs from rescues and things, like, I learned very quickly that it's like, you've got to be feeding them certain foods. A lot of rescues in different places will suggest certain foods that, and just from research from other clients, they're told to give their dogs certain things as well. And so it's not always a downer on owners not having the information. It's like they're getting told sometimes what to feed their dog and what, how to look after them and what not to do, what to do. There's no handbook on like, you get a dog and these are the things you should be aware of in terms of, desexing and, your dog's background, being mindful of that, training, structure, all of those things. It's like, oh my God.
You're going to get attacked.
Did you see that?
Yeah. I was you. It was coming in from behind. I was like, wait.
Have you seen the movie Crows? It's like in the daytime, just all the crows swooping me. That would be, at least it's live. Like people would know what actually happened. They'd be like, that didn't happen. I'm like, it's live. Watch the video.
Those things are vicious. They were coming for you.
That was like, even the wing was like half the screen there for a second. I'm like, what is going on? That's intense. But yeah, it really blows my mind how much, before you even get the dog, how much is kind of already not against you, but out of your control. And if you're not aware of that, and then like most people do, you bring the dog in, they get all the beds, all the toys, all the love, no structure. I was the same, I made all those mistakes as well. Of course it's going to go bad. Of course, like there's no other option, especially if you've got a genetically nervy, anxious dog as well, that you're just feeding into that from day one, and I think this is where a lot of owners, or even for trainers, they can struggle with, I don't know if it's the same with you, but with board and trains, it's like you can put so much work in, but as soon as that dog sees the owner, man, it's like, that's a hard one to really rewire for the dog. Even when you're putting in structure and the owners are dedicated to do so much, it's like just the sight of the owner can sometimes trigger a dog into this mess. It's like they see them and they're whining and do you know what I mean?
100%. And that happens with every single trainer and every single dog. There's some level of that, 100%. And to me, what that shows is the power of relationship and conditioning. Now imagine what I tell so generally I only do board and trains. I don't do one-on-one anymore. I do board and trains and I do online consults. And the way that my program, most dogs that come through my program are with me for 3 weeks generally, unless it's like a more serious case and I'll add a couple more weeks on. So towards the end of the third week, I should say, dogs, we usually meet up with an owner, especially now that it's summer. The dogs will usually meet up with the owners at like a local park to do our first like reintegration session. And I like to do it at a park because it's neutral and it's nice out and it's free, right? It's more relaxed. And what I tell every single client is your dog is going to act different as soon as they see you.
Yes. Did you see that? I'm trying to act so chill, but my heart is racing watching these. I'm like, it is a coffee, guys. If you want it, I'm sitting it right over here. They are literally swooping around. So, okay, it's going to be fine. It's fine.
So what I tell them all is that when they see their dog for the first time, it's going to act different, right? And I try to put a lot of content out showing the dog's process, and a big part of that is obviously I want to help people, but I want the owners to be able to see the process. It's very helpful.
Yes.
And what I always tell them is your dog will act different than they've been acting on those videos the moment they see you. But the power of that, and what I want you to realize from that, is how strong your relationship is and how powerful it is and how much your dog is conditioned through that. And we can now harness that same power to change it. And that's really, I think, where the key is. And I want people to see it. So when we meet up at the park, I'll generally have the dog, I'll bring some place cots out to the park and I'll have the dog on place hanging out there. And as soon as they come, every single dog, each at a different level, starts to either shake or that tail go crazy or starts to pant or even gets off of place and starts running around the park as if I haven't done anything with it. Those are my favorite. I hate it. It makes me look like the worst trainer. But what I always do is I tell them, this right here is exactly what I'm talking about. And it shows how powerful it is, how much you've conditioned your dog without realizing it to have anxiety, get excited, not behave, be bratty, all of these things. Now let's work on you learning how to recondition your dog by you changing. And I think that it's been a long time coming to the best way to approach it. In the beginning, I just would kind of, like, when I first started doing this a lot, to be honest, I kind of lost my shit. Like, I wouldn't know what to do. And it was very uncomfortable. And I was very nervous. And I would cause me a lot of stress because I was like, how do I handle this properly? And I know there must be a way. But what I've discovered is by explaining to them, first of all, on the phone prior, right, letting them know the reality is your dog won't look good. And then also explaining to them why, and explaining to them that now we can use this same power to change everything for the rest of the dog's life. It's almost like it's an important, empowering way of looking at it for the owner, because they realize how much they really matter, how much of a role they really play in this whole process. And it really puts it on them, right? Because
I agree.
They see the dog has made a lot of progress. They clearly see it. They watch the videos, they see it. They see what their dog is capable of. And then they also see how much they're capable of either ruining that or making that really, really work. And it throws it all on them. And then if they're a really good committed owner, they take that, they harness it, and they go all in with it. And those are the ones who really have success with it. And yeah, that's the way I approach that.
No, I agree. And I think there's a few things that you said there that are like so spot on to the whole, like, I mean, there's so many similarities, I think, in how we structure our board and trains, but just in terms of, I agree, like for that midway session, I love not going to the house first. I love meeting somewhere neutral. I've seen it work really well. It helps the owners because firstly, a little bit of the psychology behind why I do it is like, I want the owners out of their comfort zone as well. I want to see you nervous. I want to see you not at your worst, but I want to push you a little bit and see where you go. Because we know with some dogs, they can crumble under pressure or they can really thrive. And that's how you kind of work them through that as well. But I feel like I do my final go homes in their house because I think similar to you, I think we spoke about last time, because I see that, I don't know, I've just intuitively always known that that's the way that you've got to do it. It's like getting the dog out of the house and walking them in a neutral environment. You're not going to see the same triggers that might just be in the house. It might be a little part of the house that they lay that's like sends them crazy. You know what I mean? So that's an area that I always love to do, like the final go home in their house. But that midway session, seeing the owner out of their comfort zone, and quite often, owners cry in that session, because, well, a lot of the owners I work with will happy tears, but it's like that overwhelm of seeing their dog in that state, because normally they're running around. It can look like the dog's happy and excited, but when you slow that body down, you just see the mind and the body moving. And for owners, I think that's really confronting when it's like they've believed it to be a certain way, or they've believed them to just be not always happy and excited, but just full of energy and whatever it is. And then seeing them still, and that initial time when they see them, it's like there's no denying what it is. Like nothing's happening. The dog's on a bed, the dog's fine, you're filming it, owner comes in, and it's like an instant shift. And I think that, like you were saying before, it's good for the owners to see the dog at their best as well. So just like it's good to have the owners out of their comfort zone as well and a little bit nervous and stuff and pushing them through it, it's also good for them to see what their dog is capable of as well. And I think that sometimes, well, a lot of the owners I work with, they've programmed themselves to just look for the negative. Like their dog could be doing a million things right, and then it's like that one time something happens and it's like, and that's the one thing that they take away from it. It's like, well, you've actually got to reprogram the way you look at it. Like reward your dog when they're doing a good job, and work through those times that they're, maybe struggling. It's like, I think they get used to expecting it to go wrong, that they're already heading out for the walk, or they've already got that thought of like, okay, with my dog, something bad's going to happen. Like I'm going to bump into an off-leash dog. I'm going to, and it's like, well, you're going to attract that probably, because you're looking for it. So
it's all they've known, right? Think about why people are coming to us. They're not coming to us
Mm-hmm.
because their dog won't sit, right? They're coming to us generally
Exactly.
because there's something serious going on that they really need help with. And it's usually something that, at least on my end, that people have been struggling with for a while.
Yeah.
It's not like the dog starts jumping on somebody or starts biting and immediately they call the owner. Generally, they call the trainer. I mean, generally,
Yeah.
people are like pushing it to when they really, really need it. So all you know of this dog, even though like there's all this great stuff about most of these dogs, there are some dogs that like, okay, I understand why you're only looking at the negative because this dog is bad, right? But
Yeah.
most dogs, generally, there's a lot of things they're doing right, and or that could be right. And even at the end of that session, like at the go home session, like what you're describing, where they're focusing on that negative, it's because it's what they're used to seeing. And that's part of this reconditioning of the owner and retraining of the owner is you're right, that's what you're used to seeing. And yes, you should also find those things so we can correct it and deal with it. But there's a whole bigger picture here, right? There's so much more here. And something that I want to go back on that you were saying is owners seeing their dogs uncomfortable and how they respond to that, right? Whether it's being on place and just not seeing the dog run around, or seeing their dog shaking on place, or whining or panting when it's in a downstay. That stress that a lot of dogs get, that space they go into when they see the owners, but they're not allowed to react their same crazy self. And to me, it's a very important part of the program, actually, is owners seeing that stress. And I can tell a lot about the success that owner will have by how they respond to that stress. And what I mean by that is there's a couple of different responses generally that I'll see. One of them is the straight, completely, I feel so bad, it's horrible, like just almost the owner breaking down from it, right? And then there's the people who like are understand it and they're like, all right, this makes sense, the dog is stressed, right? And then there's the people who understand it and ask me, what should we do to make it better, to work through it, right? And it's kind of like three steps of towards the best, right? And that
I
first,
know.
yeah, that first one where people lose it and I can see them so hurt by it, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. And I'm not saying I don't empathize with it, because I also don't like seeing dogs stressed and uncomfortable and all of that. But it's understanding and remembering why the dog is uncomfortable, what we're doing it for, and what's the bigger picture, right? And like one of my dogs, she gets extremely stressed from fireworks and thunder and all that stuff, right? Like we spoke about in the beginning. I hate seeing her like that. It's normal, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to things like a dog that used to jump all over people, a dog that used to bite, a dog that is extremely stressed in general, that now
Mm-hmm.
you are not able to handle seeing it stressed out because we're asking it to simply stay still, right? You are not going to have an easy time being successful. You're going to struggle a lot with this because you have a lot of emotional shit to work through before you could ever help your dog. And that's the part that
Yeah.
people forget how much it plays into it. Like, we can train dogs, we can even teach humans, but I can't do the emotional work for you to be able to handle actually doing what's best for your dog. That's all on you, on the owner.
I think this is where I've found this community almost in, particularly the balance trainers that I've met, like virtually and just like chatting, through Instagram or wherever it is that there's this parallel. And I don't know if it's with other trainers as well, to be honest, but I'm talking just from my experience with balance trainers, is that there's this huge parallel between training the dog and the personal development component. And this is where I think, I've found most of the trainers are either working on themselves as well and sharing that with owners. I think that's the missing key, and something that I never really saw when I was struggling with my dog and I had a trainer come in. It's like there was no work on me. There was no help with, and I can only do the work on myself, just like owners can only do the work on themselves. But there was a very small component dedicated to working with the human. And it's something that I see time and time again with when I'm working with, because a lot of the dogs I've had in my care and been fortunate to meet have gone through other trainers. It's not that it's the last result, it's just that they've tried other things. You know what I mean? Like we were saying at the start, it's like they didn't jump on one person and they called me. It's like they've tried things. And so I think that a lot of the people that, you know, have dogs that maybe are really anxious, that are struggling with anxiety or whatever it is themselves, it's like, well, we also need to work on you as well so that you can be a better leader for your dog. Like if you're just putting your dog in place and, you know, expecting that when you go outside and walk them, it's going to be okay, or even just with crating, that's going to help a lot. But if you're not also putting some work into like your emotional stability and you kind of getting more grounded in who you are, you will struggle to some extent. Like, doesn't mean your dog's going to be reactive because of that. I'm not like linking that together, but you know what I mean? It's like if the owner isn't also putting work in on themselves to kind of work on the issues that they've got pre-dog and even during having a dog, then they're always going to have some struggle because they're going to feel guilty or bad, or I don't want to like discipline my dog because chances are something may have happened in their past that's affecting that. And so they're bringing in personal things that are happening in their world and linking that to, well, I don't want my dog to go through that. I don't want to give structure to my dog because it's like, well, I remember feeling like I had no freedom when I was a kid. It's like, these are two very separate and serious, you know, things that it's like you can't be linking your own traumas or past things that are going on in your world with how you train and live with your dog, because I think this is where people go wrong. Like funneling it back to the start is that dogs aren't human. They don't know that you've had something that's gone on in your past and that's affecting how you're living and being in the house and in the world. They don't know that. They just look at you, see you for what you are now. This is one of the best things about dogs is it's like you could go out and do the worst thing in the world and come home and your dog will be like, hey, awesome seeing you. You're just like, why are you happy to see me? Like, I've just done the worst thing today. And it's like, they don't know, you know what I mean? And that's why we love our dogs. But on the other hand, it's like, you got to be really real with dogs. Like, they're going to know if you're faking it or if you're not coming in with the right energy, they're going to pick up on that, you know, in a split instinct. And I think that's where owners struggle. It's like they try and be strong, or they're like, I'm committed to this. I'm really committed. And then the dog can just see right through that. It's like, you're not committed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think, again, I've seen this really mainly with balance training. Doesn't mean that there's not purely positive trainers who don't work on themselves. I don't know. To be honest, I haven't spoken to that many purely positive trainers. They don't
Same.
like me. But
Same.
It is what it is. I'll say this again publicly because I've said it. If there's a purely positive trainer out there who wants to talk, but not argue and not try to convince each other, but just talk, reach out to me because I would actually love it.
Yeah. Awesome.
But that being said, I think that a big part of why it's attached to balance training is a lot of people, like that whole personal development thing is, I think there's a misconception about balance training is because we use the word balance training for it, which I don't really like even, that it's just about reward and punishment, right? Because that's essentially what people mean by balance is like both ends are taken care of. And
yeah,
I don't like that because there's so much more to what proper training really is than just reward and punishment. And a big part of it that I had to learn on my own with my dog and that I try to teach everyone through my content and through working with clients and all of that is the role that you play in it. And that's not just about how you punish and reward your dog, but it's literally about how you live and how you act and the way you react to things, right? And everything you do with your dog. And because we live with our dogs, everything we do in some way is training them. So that puts how do they say? It puts the onus on you, right? I think that's the right word.
Yeah,
right?
That sounds right.
It sounds good. I haven't ever used that word in my life before, but it sounds good.
It sounds really good. I'm like, yep, okay. Got to start reading the dictionary. Don't know what that is. No, I'm kidding.
It makes it on the owner in the sense of your dog knows nothing else besides what it gets from you, really, for the most part. And as much as we don't want to humanize dogs, like let's humanize dogs for a second when it comes to leadership, right? Would you as a person, not like you specifically, but you, the general public, would you follow somebody that's not mentally stable, that acts reactive, that makes decisions solely based on emotion all the time, that can't handle shit, that doesn't have their shit together, that doesn't have some sort of structure in their life, that isn't living some sort of balanced life? And it doesn't mean being perfect because that's crazy too. I wouldn't follow someone who claims to be perfect myself, but because you're a liar. But like,
exactly,
we all are naturally drawn towards people that are doing all those things, and our dogs are looking for the same thing. And if we expect our dogs to follow us, because that's what we all essentially want, is a dog that's going to listen to us and follow direction and respect us and all these things that we're striving for. If we want that, like Sean O'Shea says, be a leader worth following, right?
I love that line. It's so good.
It's think about it for ourselves. There's a lot of people that have great things going for them that I wouldn't respect as a leader, because I don't think that they have their shit together, right? And if we don't feel that, then we're not going to be attracted to them to follow their leadership. And our dogs feel that much quicker than we do. Their whole life is instinctive and intuition based and all of that. They feel it immediately. Like, they know it before we know it.
They do. And they're reading our body language as well. Like, I always say our dogs are they've got all day to watch and observe. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I even do that. Like, I will go out somewhere, and one of my favorite things to do, and it sounds creepy, but I love people watching, like not in a stalky way, but I love going and getting a coffee. I know that sounds so weird. As soon as I said it, I'm like, okay.
You made it weird by saying stalky. People watching is awesome.
you said onus, so it's on you, all right? Yeah. Let's just put it back to you. No, but it's like, I love going to a cafe and just, you know, looking around and not saying anything and just going and watching people. And it's like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but sometimes you can look around and go like, I feel like I know what's going on in your world without even meeting you. And it's not a judgment thing, or it's not a negative thing even. It's just that people hold themselves a certain way, people speak a certain way when different things are going on in their life. And I think dogs have all day, every day to just observe that. They'll see us when we come home. Doesn't mean that they're watching us as we come through the door going, you're crying today, you must be upset. It's not that. You know, it's not that extreme, but
deeper than that.
It is. And they can pick up on, because then we naturally change the way that we interact with them. It's like, oh, I'm going to cuddle with them now, or I'm going to, you know, not hold them as accountable today because I don't feel like doing that, you know. And it's these little things that teach our dogs how to, I guess, how to be influenced by us. And if there's these little gaps, which I think is what happens with owners, it's like, I was really good, I'm doing this, this, and this. And then that one day where they really need to hold their dog accountable or whatever it is, it just sends them back so far, because their dog learns in that one moment. It's like, okay, I can gamble with you. You're not always stable, or you're not always holding me accountable when I really need to be, or you're not advocating for me when I really need you to create some space, or whatever it is. Our dogs learn in that one moment what we're about. And I think that's why it can be so challenging with dogs, because they see through all that bullshit. I don't know if you can swear on this, I just realized.
I have like 5 times, so you're good.
Okay, I'm like, I don't know if it gets banned on here or what the deal is, but
yes, you're not good.
But yeah, they see through all of that, and I think that's what makes them really cool teachers. And like I always say in my posts, it's like, humans are great teachers, but I think dogs are really awesome teachers, because they teach you things like humility. You know, I feel like a lot of the dog trainers that I've met, like including you, it's like you were saying earlier, you learn to get a lot of humility when, say, you're putting the dogs back around the owners and they're acting crazy or whatever it is. It's like, wow, like in that moment, I'm learning something about myself here that I need to work on. Like, I'm not comfortable with not having things go perfect, or I've got a bit of people pleasing going on, like whatever it is. It's like you learn from your dogs in certain moments that it's like, wow, I would have never have learnt this from a person. Like someone saying, you've got this going on, you need to work on that, is very different from when it happens in a natural way. And it's like, it hits you, you're like, oh, wow, okay, I've got to work on this for myself, not just for my dogs.
Yeah, dogs will hold us accountable. As much as it's our job to hold them accountable, they will hold us accountable to everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
Take something as simple as not getting your dog outside on time in the morning, and now you're cleaning up shit. It's that simple, right? Like, it's such a clear, obvious one that anyone can relate to. You don't even have to be a dog owner that cares about training. Just as simple as that. and now you're stuck cleaning something up that no one wants to have to deal with, and it's on you. Your dog naturally is holding you accountable to it. You got to deal with that, right? And
Yep.
it gets deeper and deeper with that. And then when it comes to like the more serious dogs and cases that are more serious, like your dog will hold you accountable to breaking these rules, breaking the structure that you're supposed to have to make it work. And when you get bit, think about it. And I'm not saying it's your fault, because I don't believe the whole thing of like faulting owners, but take a look at what you might have done that messed it up, that caused that to happen. And really, this any behavior or anything is, there's usually some level of, you can call it human error, right? That exists over there, and it becomes more of like human error, especially when you actually know what you should be doing and you're not. Right? That's where it really starts to come out.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like the whole idea of like faulting owners, because most owners don't know better whatsoever. And most owners do the best they possibly could. And I think if you're feeding your dog and you're taking care of it, like, props to you, because there are people that don't even do that much. Like,
exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's like, once you do know, do better. And then it's on you. So it's more of like, it's not your fault, but it's absolutely your responsibility. Because
exactly,
I think there's too much in general of owner blaming, and that's just an unhealthy. So I shift from.
I think that's where, you know, trainers that really excel, it's not about how many followers you have or necessarily how much content you put out. And I mean, I'm very big on that, putting out a lot of free content as well, like all of us are. But it's like, how real are you? Like, are you sharing your own struggles with owners? You know, I know when I chat to owners, like, the first thing I say to them is it's like, I can empathize with you. I know exactly what you're going through. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off owners, where sometimes they can feel embarrassed to say certain things, or it's like, because like you said, it's like that human error. They know they're not doing the right thing a lot of the time. They know it. You know, it's just that they don't know what to do. And so I think having someone come in and go, well, you're just messing everything up, you've ruined that relationship with your dog. Like, I didn't pay you this money for you to come in and tell me that. I know that. And so I think having someone come in and say, like, I understand why you're in this position right now. I'm not making excuses for you, but I'm definitely not going to shame you for, you know, letting things get to this point. Because I think that's how stuff happens. It's like one thing happens, another thing happens, and before you know it, you're a couple of years in and you're like, you've got a full-size dog and you're like, this is a lot bigger than what I expected it to be. But yeah, just having that empathy for owners, I think, is something that is huge. And I remember even when I was starting off my journey with my dogs, I think that was something that when I thought I want to start my own business, is it's like, I'm going to put myself out there, even though I hate being on camera. I was always behind the camera, you know, hiding behind there. Like, I love technology, but I love the behind the scenes kind of side of it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't want to be on here, like, I wouldn't care if I had someone else come in and they were the only ones that were on camera training the dogs. It's not about that. But I think owners being able to watch and relate to you and go, okay, like, she had a similar experience, or I like how she speaks, or she's relatable, or he's really funny, or he's cool, he's really, you know, authentic. They're the moments that people relate to and probably want to come and book you in for. Not the fact that you've had 10 previous clients that it all appeared to go well. They wrote really great testimonials. It's like, that doesn't mean anything if you can't see the trainer, in my opinion. Like, I know when I started off my journey with my dogs, it's like, I remember constantly researching for trainers and I felt like I couldn't find anyone's face. It was all like, book in for a consult, click through here, all these click funnels to get to an organization that I'm like, can I just see someone smiling? Like, can I just see someone like, hey, this is who I am, and this is who you'll get to chat to if you give us a call. And that might make you feel a little bit more inclined to go, cool, like, hey, Jenny, like, this is what's going on, as opposed to like, I have no clue who's going to be on the other end of this line, if they're going to judge me, because I'm already judging myself. So do you know what I mean? Like, just being able to see the trainer and message them through a DM or, you know, through the website or whatever it is. If I wasn't a dog trainer and I was in the position my owners were, like, I was years ago, I know I would certainly have no hesitations reaching out to say you and sending a message. But it just didn't feel like years ago that was an option. I don't know. I know Instagram was around then, but it just didn't feel like it was as acceptable to message like a professional organization or something like that via DM. Like, I don't know. I just felt like there wasn't as many trainers that were sharing content of them working a dog. It was just like a little before and after, a snippet on a website, but you wouldn't really see the trainer in action talking.
Yeah, I'm all in on everything you said. Like, I
Yeah.
fully believe in it. Anybody who watches any of my content will know it. Like, my Instagram stories, there are days when it's not even about dogs. Like, if I'm going somewhere, you're gonna see what I'm doing. You're gonna see what I ate for breakfast. You're gonna see what I ate for supper. If you don't like what I ate for supper and you don't want to hire me because of that, that's fine with me. I eat good food. Y'all should look at it. But like, I believe in it. And in the beginning, when I started all of this, I was the opposite type of person. There was no way that I would be sitting on like a Facebook Live, a YouTube Live, like talking to people. There's no way I would do any of this stuff. And again, back to the whole personal development thing, this part of it has been one of the best things for my personal development is saying, fuck it. If you don't like the way I look, that's fine. I do. Like, if you don't like this, if you don't like that, I don't care, right? And what happens because of that, when you have that attitude and that vibe that people can feel that, you're only attracting the people who are really meant to work with you. Because imagine if no one saw your face or my face, right? And we actually stayed behind the camera and we just showed out all the things that you're describing of like what you saw when you were searching. And then the client finally meets you. You go to their house to get their dog, or they're dropping their dog off, however you do it. And they're like, I don't want to work with somebody with long hair and tattoos, right?
Exactly.
And then you're stuck in that strange situation with your client, and the client with the trainer, and that's fine with me if someone doesn't want to work with a guy with long hair and tattoos who's cool, right? It's fine. Like,
who's cool. I love how you just slipped that one in there.
Yeah.
Who's cool and amazing and eats really great food. Just saying.
Exactly. And what it does is it makes that filter and it makes it real, and it also makes it that we really attract the people that are meant to work with us. If we think about it, besides for the fact that we're like across the world from each other, our training is probably not that different, right? And obviously you do it the Sarah way and I do it my way, and we each have our personal twist on it. But when it boils down to it, most good trainers are doing things in a fairly similar way, each with their own style to it. But what really differentiates Bob up the street and me is not necessarily the training, it's me, right? So if I show
100%.
myself, then people get to realize why they should train with me rather than Bob. Besides that, I train dogs well and that you train dogs well, and right, it's I like this person. And what training really boils down to, like a ton of our work is interpersonal relationship with the clients. I mean, I go to clients' homes, so I'm in their house. I see how they're interacting with their children. I see them I see the mess in the house, so I see the no mess, right? I see them with their partners, their husband, their wife, their girlfriend, their boyfriend.
The bickering, like you see even sometimes bickering. You're in the family when you go into their house. Like, I wouldn't invite anyone into my house. Like, I would, this is where, you know, us sharing who we are, it's like you feel like you know them before they're coming in. Like, I don't want to book 5 sessions before, and it's not about seeing your face, but I want to get a vibe of who you are before I'm booking in for 5 sessions and you're coming in here. Like, who are you? You could be a murderer for all I know. Like, you know?
We take care of all of that by putting it out there. And like, my favorite thing is when I go to a client's house or they drop the dog off and they're like, this is so awesome, I feel like I know you already. That's when I know that I'm doing something good with my social media, you know? And
exactly.
There's
and you can sorry to interrupt, I'm excited.
Well, there's that part that never used to exist, and there's a lot of people who are still not doing it and they're missing out. And besides for that is it makes it all real, right? When there's a person behind 100%. It makes it real. And when you find something that's real, you want to do the work more. You feel more connected to it.
And like we were saying, a lot of the work is with the owner. So if you've got to do almost that coaching with the owner and that help with them, if they don't like you when they see you, or they don't, it's not about like having a best friend, like a really close friendship, but if they don't feel like they know you in a sense or they can trust you, why the hell are they gonna, let alone have you train their dog? It's like, why are they gonna want you in their house? Why are they gonna want to share what they've done wrong, what they've done right? Like, you need to have, in my opinion, some level of rapport with them before. I would certainly want to, if I'm paying someone money, we don't need to be best friends, but I want to at least know that a little bit about you. Like, I don't need to know your degrees or anything, but I want to get a vibe of who you are before you're coming into my house, and I'm going to share with you what's been going on with my dog over the past years and maybe how I've influenced that. I think that's been the shift for me, and what I've seen with other trainers is it's like, because we're doing board and trains, and in my opinion, that's, you know, that's really where the juice comes in, you know, the board and trains, because you get to work with the owners a lot more and the dogs a lot more, obviously. But like, for most of us, the board and trains are in our house. Like, we are having dogs in our, we are filming in our house. Like, it's something that if you asked me years ago, like, what would you do? I'm like, I would never want to film my, I would never want to, like, totally fine. How's the storm going over there? Is it okay?
It's quiet. Just my dogs decided to go for a walk. Hendrix down. Good boys. No. Good. Okay.
That's all good. You've got so many dogs there, I can understand. It's like when one does it, the other one's like, oh, you're hopping off. I can sneaky over here too.
Yeah, that's my two boys. They're the worst together.
When I have just my two, it's like one will do something and the other one just looks over like, oh, have you released? Is it time to hop off? It's like, no, not so fast. Couldn't imagine with that many that you've got. But I lost my train of thought, but I think it was just along the lines of, you know, having dogs in for the board and trains, you get to know the owner, you get to know the dog, and it's a much more, I guess, intimate process, because it's not just a high and buy. And that was something that at the start I didn't want to do in homes, even the dog walks, because I felt like it was such a disconnect between, like, I was there and I felt like I was leaving, you know, I was leaving them, like, with the dog and, like, just dumping all this information on them. And I'd had certain owners like, oh, should we just keep booking in sessions and stuff? And it's like, they'd ask me that prior to coming in. It's like, let's just do one. Let's see how you feel with it. Get comfy. Let's see if we're the right fit as well. And like you said, you chat to them on the phone beforehand. None of this, like, I'm locking you into anything, which I feel like, oh, I think my phone's just blacked out.
No, you're there. I see you.
Oh, my screen's just faded. I think I'm on 5% battery.
Oh, no.
So if we cut out, I've got my laptop here as well. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, if we can do that. And I'm only around the corner, so I can always duck back if we need to finish it as well. But yeah, it's pretty crazy how we've all, I feel like, had these experiences. I don't know if you've gone through other trainers, but I feel like with my dog, like, I went through a different trainer, and that also gave me information on, like, okay, it's not about who I don't want to be, but it just gave me information of this is how other people are teaching. Just like when we watch, you know, on social media, like, other trainers doing it, it's like, it's interesting to see how other people do it. And then you can pick and pull areas that you're like, I like that approach, or this is how I do it a little bit different. And it's just cool to have that now. Whereas before, I feel like when you start a business, it's very solo. It's like, I hope I'm doing the right thing. I hope someone resonates with this. Like, I know no one seems to be watching this video, but then 6 months later, it's like, wow, your content helped me so much. And it's like the video that you thought no one watched was the one that someone got this little bit of insight from, even if it was you, like, tripping over something or being stupid on a story, or me singing on a story, which I sometimes do as well, and I don't know why, but they're little things that it's so random.
I watch those when you play your guitar or you sing. Like, I think it's so nice. Like, that's the human side of it that we're talking about, right? So if someone is like, she's such a weirdo, she's singing on her Instagram stories and she's a dog trainer, then you don't want to work with them, and they shouldn't work with you, right? And like, someone else is gonna see it and be like, that is so cool. Like, she sings and she trains dogs and she's being a normal person or whatever and
Mm-hmm.
seeing it on your Instagram, right? And like they're gonna connect to it. And I think that's what it's about.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm so sorry. My phone is on 1%. I don't know how much Pardon?
Switch to your laptop.
Yeah, I'll try and switch over. I hope that it'll let me connect without the internet connection. But if need be, can I call you in 5? I'll just quickly duck back and get my charger from the car.
We can try. I can try to entertain everyone until then.
I'm so sorry, Russ. I didn't.
All right, guys, you're stuck with me. So who is still watching? Let's see. Katie, this has been one of my absolute favorite conversations. Cool. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys even watching. We're going to see if Sarah comes back, because I did want to wrap this up and actually continue the conversation a little bit. It was a great conversation. Good to see you too, Dylan. Hey, Carol. Hey, Raquel. Hey, Rob. Oh, Rob, you're also in Australia. Cool. So we'll see what happens. If you guys all log off. Christina Sosa, you are, what's your Instagram name? I know you from Instagram, and I'm not matching it up to the name. And now you're watching on YouTube. Cool. So I'm gonna hope that she comes back. She was in a park, so she was in a park, and because she left her house to do this, and she lives right near the beach, so she was in the park. Oh, Pup from the 509. I knew it. I knew who I was talking to. Cool. So you guys are stuck with me for a little bit. So let's do this. I'm watching too. I'm Sarah's sister. Cool. Nice to meet you, Lauren. That's awesome. All right, let's do this. Whoever's watching, ask me anything. Throw up some questions, dog training, life stuff, personal stuff. Ask me absolutely anything. I'll answer questions now. Sarah cannot even spell her name. Why? You're saying she didn't spell her name right? Did she spell it wrong? Lauren, how does she supposed to spell it? But let's do this, guys. Whoever's watching, ask me absolutely anything. Personal stuff, dog training stuff, things you always wanted to know about me, things you might not really want to know about me. Hey, Marge, how you doing? All right, guys, ask me whatever you want. Let's do some quick, fun Q&A, random stuff, switch it up a little bit, and hopefully Sarah will be back soon. And until then, we can just chat and hang out. I got a bunch of dogs hanging out with me, and thank God they relaxed. And they're all calm and relaxed, because some of them weren't. I spelled it wrong in my first message. Oh, you did. I saw. Yeah, so before we went live, that's funny. Before we went live, I had it on the bottom where it's like going across saying Sarah. I had it spelled S-A-R-A. And I was like, is your name spelled properly? And she made me switch it to the H, and then you did the same thing. Come on, guys, ask me questions. Anything. This is on you. We want to keep this going until Sarah comes back. So ask me questions, dog training stuff. I'm going to be starting hopefully a new series of videos that I'll post up on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Probably going to call it Russ's Real Talk. And it's going to be us getting serious about different shit pertaining to dog training, the industry, and things like that. Different way, the way I see things, the way I think about things when it comes to a lot of dog topics. So I'm looking forward to that. You guys can look out for that stuff. If you guys have ideas of what you'd like to hear me chat about, talk about and explain in that, you can let me know. They'll be a little bit longer. It's not going to be 60-second videos. They'll be more like probably like 5 minutes or so each, just or more or less. No rule to it. Just me talking, sharing my thoughts on specific topics, maybe a little rants, because those are always fun. I kind of did one of those the other day on Sunday. Not planned, but I just was really passionately thinking about something pertaining to purely positive stuff. Yeah, I'm excited for it too. So Christina, if you have any ideas or anything like that, you can ask me. Oh, here, Lauren asked the question, how many dogs do you have in, and what is the main behaviors you're working with if they're board and trained? So all my dogs are board and trains. I only do board and trains, and I have 2 training dogs with me right now, and then 2 boarding dogs. So the 2 training dogs that I'm working with are both interesting cases. So Daisy, who's a little cockapoo, 4 years old, Cocker Spaniel Poodle mix, for those of you who don't know what a cockapoo is. She's dealing with extreme anxiety and fear issues that have been a part of who she is for a very, very long time, deeply ingrained in her. Possibly genetic, who knows? It's a part of who she is. and she was on Prozac for a while until she came for training, which didn't help her at all. She's actually housemates with another dog who just went home on Sunday from my program, so they were here together for a bit. So she's with me for a total of 4 weeks. What we're really focusing on, obviously, is her anxiety, teaching her new ways of coping with the world, of handling things that trigger her anxiety and her stress and her fear, and helping her learn how to deal with it better. So that's a fun one. I like dealing with these more serious cases when they come up. And I've learned a lot from the serious cases. Then I got my boy Chase, whose mom is on here. And Chase is a really serious case of a messy mix. You ready? Fear, anxiety, stress, resource guarding, aggression, and reactivity. A very dangerous mix of stuff. So he's with me for a total of 5 weeks. And he's going home this coming Sunday. And I'm really excited for him. He's come a long way. And what we're obviously focusing on with him is learning how to, number one, obviously stop all those bad behaviors, because that's important. But more than that is how to cope with the world in a better way, similar to Daisy, but in a different approach, because it's a very different style of fear and anxiety. Because the way Daisy deals with her fear and anxiety is by shutting down, and the way Chase deals with it is by aggression, reactivity. He's bitten his owners multiple times, and there's a lot of dangerous stuff involved. So what his owners are going to learn how to do is both help him progress, how to manage him, because there's always a level of management with a dog like him, and how to help him cope better, and what life should look like with him, and how to deal with all the struggles that he has and will continue to have some of those struggles, because we're not making him perfect. I think we have Sarah back. We do, and that's exciting. So hopefully I kept you guys entertained for those 5 minutes until Sarah came back on. But now she's here.
Oh, you can hear. I'm so sorry about that. Oh.
That's all right. That's all right. Your sister is watching, Lauren. So we got to chat a little bit. I was going to bring her on instead and just see if anyone notices the difference. But
oh my God, it's funny. You absolutely would know the difference, because she would probably tell you when she was about what. I think I was 5. I used to tell her I was adopted from India, because I'm the only one in my family. I don't know where I came up with this lie, but I'm the only one with brown hair. Like when I was little, my hair was almost black, like similar to yours, and brown eyes, really dark skin. She has blonde hair, light eyes, and so does my brother. And so I used to just say to her all the time, like, you know what? When I was adopted from India. Really, like looking up at me. Yep, yeah, I was.
So I have a question for you, since we're anyways had that split in our, what we're doing. So let's shift subjects for a quick second. What do you see as being like the biggest struggle that owners have, not that dogs have? What's the biggest struggle that you see from your experience that owners have?
That's a good question. Oh, my heart was racing so fast getting here. I'm like, now I'm jump into it. Put me on the spot. I think, like we were saying before, I think it is that struggle that dogs are not the same species, like as we are. I really do think that that is a huge struggle for owners to understand that, you know, even how we communicate, because I think as humans we communicate verbally, and, you know, we say, I'm stressed, like, leave me alone, give me space, move away. Owners will do the same with their dogs. They'll communicate with their dogs in the same way that they would other humans, if that makes sense. And I see that being, so probably communication, really, in that, like, they'll communicate to their dogs in the same way they would their friend or their family or their child. And dogs struggle with that because they're not the same species. So it's like the species thing, and then also the communication discrepancy, in that, like, how they would say no to a child is very different. Like, they'll hit their child's hand for, like, going and reaching on the stove, but then when it comes to their dog, they'll really struggle with any form of discipline or, you know, holding them accountable. So that's probably the main thing that I see I struggle with. How about you?
Well, I think that it's along the same lines, but I think that the biggest part that I think that owners struggle with, so the communication, the way I look at it is there's a language barrier, right, between dogs and we all get that, although a lot of times we forget it. And it's like, not only do they not speak English, they don't speak human in general, right? So if I meet somebody from another country who speaks a different language, we can probably still communicate a bit just because we're both humans, and there are some things that are very common between human communication. I've traveled to other countries. I've been in places where nobody speaks English at all, and we're able to communicate with each other because we're both human, right?
And if you're in, say, Spain and you need to go to the toilet, there's probably some universal things that are going to be like, we don't speak verbally the same language, but you're going to know if I need to go to the toilet. So I'm going to quickly show you, you know what I mean?
Right, and we're going to get it. Now, if we try to do those same things, not even verbally with our dogs, they're going to think you're nuts, right? Or they're going to start playing, or whatever they'll do, they're not going to get it. So communication, I think, is just one of those things that's necessary to build a clear line of communication in order to actually have any results, in order to build a relationship and all the good stuff that comes out of training and out of life with the dog in general. But the thing that I think that owners struggle with the most is probably accountability, not even the communication, because communication is easy. I mean, not easy, but once we have a language, it's fairly simple to use it, right?
Yeah.
And the other things that are involved in it, even lifestyle changes, like you can do it if you really want it, but accountability is the real struggle. Like punishing a dog for doing something wrong, holding a dog accountable for rules that you set in place. Like that's the struggle, because that's the part that plays into everything we spoke about. All that emotional stuff is the accountability, right? So I think that's what I find the most is the biggest struggle, really, for most owners that I speak to and work with. And it was the hardest for me.
Oh, absolutely. And like off the tail end of that, I think from the programs, I guess, that we are taking the dogs through and the journey that the owners are on with the dogs, I think off the back of that, affection is so hard. Like for owners, I feel like that is the struggle. It's like, yeah, you know, I can have them on the place bed and stuff, but when it's like, leave your dog, like let them be, like, oh, they look so peaceful, want to go rev them up or shake them or pat them or tell them they're being good. That is a huge struggle that I see a lot with owners. I think that's the shift of even owners that are really dedicated and committed. It's like, I think there's probably, you probably see it as well, all the owners that most of the owners that you probably deal with that are coming into your world, it's like they probably have given way too much affection to their dog. Because let's be real, when you get a dog, you're not getting it to just be like, all right, on the bed, I'm never going to see you, great bed, nothing else. It's like, I think we all have that part of us. It's just like we see a dog, just like a baby for some people. They see it and they just want to hold it. They just want to touch it. They just want to, there's something about that part of being a human that it's like if something's beautiful or something's precious, you just want to touch it and hold it and, you know, squeeze it and whatever it is. And I think that owners probably struggle with that a lot as well with their dogs. It's like they're being good. I just want to go over and it's like, you know, and touch them or pat them or kiss them on the head. And I know that was an issue I used to have with, I remember telling stories to owners, at horrendous stories where, you know, my family and I would all go out and Lauren would be able to back me up on this one. We're terrible together. We're like, honestly, we're terrible. We'd go to cafes and there'd be a dog tied up out the front and it's like being so good. You know, it's just laying there waiting for its owner. We'd just go over and start patting it and, you know, almost kissing it and stuff, which we wouldn't do. But it's like, who led us to believe that we can do that? Like, that's a huge boundary issue. And I think that's probably another thing. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but boundaries, I think, is a really huge one for owners, which probably stems into accountability as well. But being able to communicate to other owners, no, you cannot pat my dog. No, you cannot bring your other dog over. No, your dog and my dog won't be friends. I think that's something that owners struggle with. And when I chat to them, they'll say, you know, I'm fine when it's just me, but if someone like comes over and asks me if you know, they can pat my dog, I really struggle to tell them no. I struggle to tell other humans, no, they cannot come into my space with my dog. I don't know if you see that a lot as well.
Yeah, well, this all just plays back into the personal development stuff, right? And that's why, as much as people will want to try to get away from it, if you really want success, you're going to have to just face it. Because if you can't say no to something, there's something to think about with you internally of why you can't say no. right? And that goes for not saying no to your dog. That goes for not saying no to a human who wants to touch your dog. I mean, like, we all understand this idea, like no means no, that everybody talks about, like when it comes to people, right? Not touching people, it would be very strange. And we know that it's bad. You are antisocial and you are a bad person if you go up and touch somebody inappropriately when you shouldn't, right? There's a whole movement about it. But when it comes to like saying no to somebody touching your dog, it all goes out the window. And why are we having such a hard time with it? Why are we having such a hard time setting boundaries about our personal life, our personal property, which at the end of the day, that's our dogs, and our rules? Why do we have such, and I say we because I think in general people struggle with it, is what is so hard about holding those boundaries? And that's where you are going to be forced to go into that personal development side of it, is like, yeah, why is it such a struggle for me? Why is it? Right? And you're going to be, if you really want to be successful with this, you're going to have to face that stuff and work through it, and in turn become a better person. I think dog training, I mean, my own dog, but dog training in general has made me a much better person than I would be without it, because it forced me to face a lot of these things that we discuss, and it forced me to actually think about it, whether I'm like, first of all, think about it and then hopefully work on it, right? And it leads down this whole rabbit hole of becoming a better person.
And I think to funnel it back, it's like, this isn't an America thing. This isn't a Australia thing. This isn't a male or female issue. You know, even with the Me Too movement and all of that, it's a people issue. Like, we struggle with boundaries. We struggle with saying no. We struggle with speaking up in general. And I think that's where, you know, we can only speak from balanced trainers or whatever we want to call ourselves, dog trainers that, you know, teach with reward and punishment and a whole other range of things, is that I think why, and particularly you're someone that's like created this really great community of reaching out to other trainers. What we all have in common is that we're not afraid to put ourselves out there, and not in a obtrusive, rude way. It's like, but putting yourself out there, putting out the best and the worst, you're going to attract in people that resonate with that. And it's like, at the same time, we've also had to practice our boundaries along the way. And I think that's where, like you were saying, which you hit the nail on the head, it's like, I think a lot of us have become better humans since having our challenging dogs and through starting our businesses, is that we've had to learn that through properly having owners that, you know, don't have those boundaries in place, or just not even with the dogs in general. I know my boundaries probably weren't very strong prior to having the dog that I have, and since having him and having to learn that I've got to speak up and, you know, say no to people and communicate what I want with people really clearly. Sometimes having someone else that's separate to you to use that as your way to do it can be an easier way to get into doing it for yourself, if that makes any sense. Like I'm sure there's parents that find it really easy when it's their child to go, no, he's not going to that park, or no, he's not going to that party. If it's someone asking them, it's like, oh, you know, my friends ask me, I can't say no, surely I've got to go to that. But why is it so easy when it's something else, like a dog or a person? But when it's our own boundaries, we kind of just go, oh, I probably should, you know, I probably should say yes. That'd be rude if I said no, or what would they think of me if I said no? We really struggle with boundaries. And
good boy. Yeah, it all really goes hand in hand, and the deeper you get into one, the deeper you're gonna get into the other. I've said this so many times when I've on the show, is I don't really read dog training books. I read a lot of personal development books and a lot of life books, politic books, things that are about the world in general, and it's all dog training. It's all one and the same. And the more we realize that, the more successful we'll get at it, the better we'll get at it, the better the results we'll get, because these rules, every single thing, like I was making a list last night in my notes, like I was trying to put it together as a nice post, but just a list of things that are in common between dog training and life, and having a better dog and having a better society and a better life and a better world. And it's literally every single thing that works for the dogs: accountability, structure, rules, boundaries, right? Like what love actually looks like, every single thing about it. If you take it all and just switch dogs for humans or dogs for society, you will see extreme parallels. And if we actually put that to real life with our dogs and with each other and with society, like the world would be a better place. Everything would be better because it's all the same. The truth is the truth, no matter what you apply it to.
Exactly. And I think when you think of things that we know, like there's studies and there's proven things that show what works for human development, like creating routine, self-care, creating practices in your daily life, whether it be yoga, meditation, exercise, like mental fitness, physical fitness, all these things that we know work really well for humans. It's like, why is when it comes to dogs, it's like discipline or routine or structure is boring. It's like we know for humans that structure is so important. Like we were saying, the parallels between the human world and the dog world is, although we're completely different species, it's really eerily similar in that, like, we do thrive off the same things. We thrive off structure, we thrive off good food, we thrive off clear boundaries, clear communication. The people that struggle are ones that don't really have good boundaries, that maybe don't have leaders or people around them that are setting good examples, that are taking the lead, that are effectively communicating, that are eating well. Like all of those things are so similar in the dog world, and it's crazy how we've managed to humanize dogs in so many ways. But then all the areas that we really should be and need to be, it's like, oh well, that's cruel and that's mean, and we shouldn't be doing that with dogs. It's like, what we have with all of this other
Well,
stuff.
I think that there is a parallel in how we humanize dogs to how humans are treating their children and each other. And like if we think about so I have spoken about this book so many times. So for those of you guys who are listening, sorry, but read the book and you'll get why I talk about it so much. But there's a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And I'm sure you can read it even if you're in Australia and get a lot out of it.
I will. The Coddling of the American Mind. I need to write that down somewhere.
So if you read that book and switch out the word American Mind to American Dog or Modern Dog, right? You are literally going to see a dog training book. And what it speaks about is parents over coddling their children, parents not letting their children deal with things, work through things, almost babying adult children and things like that, it's become cultural norms in a lot of the Western world in general. This becomes cultural norms that it only makes sense that these things are happening with our dogs. I mean, there are purely positive parenting books, right?
Yeah.
So of course it's going to happen with the dogs. We can't expect anything different. And the reality is that that's not how world works. So I think the reason why, like you were saying, we humanize dogs, but only to a certain extent. I think the problem is that we're humanizing it all the way. But the real problem starts with how our society is in general. And that's why dogs are being humanized the wrong way. Because if we thought about it, sorry?
Or we're picking and choosing. It's like punishment. Like we have punishment, as soon as we come outside, if we speed and all those other things, it's like there's things there, but we're picking and choosing what kind of sounds good to put out there. Do you know what I mean?
Choosing, I think a lot of it is parallels. I think a lot of it is there are people who are against accountability.
Yep.
In society, right? And there are people who don't believe in rules in society, right? And things like that. And the reality is that what keeps society, whether we like it or not, and whatever people's feelings on things like that are, is the end of the day, what keeps, let's say, use your example of speeding, what keeps the highway safe, that you and I can go on the highway without knowing each other and get to our destination, hopefully safely, is simply the fact that we will be held accountable for breaking the rules that are set in place for everybody, right? And that's one thing.
Like even prior to that, there are rules when you go outside. Even before being held accountable, there is actually there's structure when you go outside. It's not like, all right, you're breaking rules that you don't even know exist.
Right.
It's like, that's the
Think
other
about
one.
it like this. If there was a suggested speed limit, I don't know about you, but I would never keep to it, right? Like, I like driving fast. I love it. It feels good. I have a Jeep. I could take the roof off and it's fun, and I could have my music loud and I could speed and have fun, right?
Mhm.
And the only reason, I'll be very real about it, why I keep to a speed limit as much as I could is simply because $250 and points on my license sucks, right? And at the end of the day, a lot of people, if they really say the honest truth, would agree and say the same thing. The reason why you are careful with certain rules is because the consequence of breaking those rules is going to suck. If a cop pulled me over and gave me a $5 ticket, I'd pay it every time and keep speeding, right?
Definitely.
So it's not just the rules, because rules that are not enforced are simply suggestions.
It's knowing the rules, but then also being held accountable to that. So it's like, if now you know what you're meant to do and you're actively choosing to not do that, or again, like you were saying, the consequence or the punishment isn't meaningful enough to that person, because there's going to be people that $100 speeding fine for me is meaningful, but then to someone else, to you, to someone down the road, it's like, I'd still pay that every time. So you've got to find, there's got to be like, everyone's going to have their own individual consequence or punishment that is meaningful to them. And it's the same with dogs. It's like one approach. This is why I'm not a huge fan of the cookie cutter. This is how we do it with every dog. It's like, I wait till I see the dog. It's like, well, this is how we're doing it today. And even when I think I'm prepared, it's like, well, guess we're not doing it this way. We're going to mix it up, and that's what I think is so cool about all of us trainers and the experiences that we've got with dogs and without dogs, is that we learn to adapt and we learn to get comfortable being out of our comfort zone and being put into positions that we actually are actively finding situations to put dogs out of their comfort zones. And I know for me, like at the start, like, because I had a reactive dog, going around other dogs lunging and barking, that's putting me out of my comfort zone as well, because that triggers things that I had. So it's like, it's not only awesome for the dogs, it's like good for us to be constantly bombarded with things. It's like, okay, how am I going to approach to this? Yeah, might not have had the most amazing sleep, might be having a fight with my partner or my family. I've still got to get on with the day and be present, keep moving. You can't let emotional things take over in those moments. And it's funny what you were saying before about that book. I'm curious to know if you've had any owners that say to you, because I've had a few that are like, man, you'd make a good parent someday. And it's like, it's funny how people make that, like you were saying, people know that there's this parallel there. They know that dogs, and even like when I'm talking to people about, before I've met them and I have the phone consult, they're like, wow, so it's kind of like kids then, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
It is.
like we said, all the ideas are parallel. So as soon as like we actually start to explain the why behind everything and it starts to click in their head, it only makes sense that it's going to lead to some sort of comment like that. Like another great book, while we're on it, since a couple people have asked me about book suggestions, and this one was suggested to me by Sean O'Shea and by Josh. I don't know if you know, like Josh and Julie. So it's called Your Kids Are Your Own Fault.
I've heard of this one. I haven't read it, but I've heard of it. That's meant to be a really good book.
And it's, again, a great dog training book. So, like, those are the types of dog training books that I read. I don't have children. I read parenting books. Like, if you come to my house, you're going to see parenting books, and I don't have children. But
people are looking around like, Russ, where are the children kept? You're like, I'm not even getting into this conversation.
Yeah, my sister, they're all in crates.
Oh my God, I've had a few like clients that have made jokes, like when they've got crates, they'll like, before I head over for like one of the sessions, the kids are in the crates, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't be saying this live, but we just laugh because it's like, do you mean I can put that collar on the kids and they'll do what I say? I'm like, no, I don't know, I don't have kids, so I can't speak on that side, but you probably could hold them accountable in some way or another.
Every single family who I work with, I literally wait, especially when they have younger kids. At some point, the mom or the dad says, can we use this on the toddler? Can we use it on the teenager? Right?
Everyone.
As soon as they do it, I always laugh because it's like I'm waiting for that moment. As soon as they start to realize how the system works and how much sense it makes, they're like, can we order one for our teenager? I think he needs one. And it makes so much sense. And as soon as I get to that point, it's like, I know I'm successful in this because they actually understand it.
And it's also like an icebreaker too. Like people think that this sort of training is so serious. I'm like, it's actually funny when people realize that parallel, you can make jokes. It's like, don't you hate it? Like, or when you go into, that's another thing I love about, going into like the go home sessions and you see like the kids around running or playing with their toys. And it's like something happens and you can go, see what the kids are doing here, or say they yell at their kid, or, you know, something happens. It's real life stuff. And you can instantly make a parallel between that and what's going on in this situation that you're trying to teach them.
And it makes it relatable.
Makes it relatable because I think, like you were saying before, there's so many parallels, but there's going to be some owners that need it said in a certain way. And one thing that I learned from my previous job, because my boss was a profiler, like a forensic profiler with the police at some stage. And one of the biggest things I learned from that job was learning about the human brain, because she had to go into like interrogations and learn motivations from different people. So it was very much people development and that sort of thing. And it's like the way that you share information or the way that you easily receive information, whether that's through verbal or written, whatever it is, and you know your own style, you're going to communicate it in that way. The person across from you, another owner, your friend, your sibling, whoever it is, they're going to have a different style most likely. So if you're going into a situation and you're going, well, read this book and read that, and they're like, well, it doesn't work for me. Whereas you know that they learn in a way, you're chatting to them and you ask a few questions and it's like, would you like me to physically demonstrate this? Yes, I would. Okay, so that tells me that you clearly learn a little bit better visually. So let me now, and I'm not saying this to them, but these are the sort of things that I do where I'm like, let me now physically get the kid to do something so I can make a parallel between that and the dog, as opposed to just talking their ear off with it. And they're not learning that way. Just like I think for a lot of us that run board and trains, we give written information packets, we provide videos, we provide the physical training. I think that's so helpful for the owners, not just because it should be a requirement, but because they're getting different forms of information. They're getting the visual, they're getting the written, they're getting the verbal. So if you're working with an owner that's maybe doesn't read much and you're just giving them all this written information, yeah, you still should do that. But my approach is also like try and take that extra step and like understand how they receive information. And like if it's like visually demonstrating something to them, it might feel weird, but visually putting the dog in a position and showing them uncomfortable and then, you know, showing a correction or whatever it is. And they're like, oh, you just see them go, oh, so that's the same as like in the house when this happens. And it's like this little switch happens and you're like, yeah, I did say that like 50 times inside, but it took that one thing visually for them to just, that's what it means with this, this, and this. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's all about, that's why it's important for us to connect, right? In general, because if we don't connect with the client, if the client doesn't connect with us, we're never going to find that way of communicating with them that's going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that part of it is so important to me. Like even simply knowing where somebody lives and what they do for a living and simple things like that will come into play so much that it's important. It's about, it's a relationship and you got to teach based on that. It's so much more than just do this, do that. If you just teach by telling a client, do this, do this, do this, do this, they're probably not going to do any of it. But if you make it relatable and it's something that's personal to them, that's when it's going to become real. That's when they're going to do it.
Like, because we all preach about training being a lifestyle, right? And it's like, I know when I speak to the clients, exactly the same as you, I like to know, I don't even know everything about their life, but it's like, I need to know what an average day looks like, because I know that there will be certain situations where I remember even when I'd get training sessions, and I loved that, like early on with my dog. And it's like, I was at a space where I was dedicated, and you want dedicated owners, but for every owner to go put in this many reps of this and this and this, it's like that's not going to work for someone that's a shift worker or that doesn't have that lifestyle. And I think understanding the owner and what their lifestyle is, okay, so you're a shift worker, so you're only home at these times. Let's look at a routine for you coming back, and I'm mindful of that when I take on that board and train. How can I start to set up the routine in my house so that when the dog is home, it's not like cold turkey into this whole other way of living. It's like, all right, so you're probably going to be more sleeping in these times. The owner's probably more going to walk you at this time, like not down to a T, but you know what I mean? It's like thinking about how can I make the owner and the dog the most successful for when they're back, not just working it always into my lifestyle, because that's going to be so, the dog might only be walked at nighttime. So if I'm never preparing the dog to be outside at nighttime, of course it's going to be another level of struggle when the dog goes home. They're never like, what's this room? Like, I've only been out when it's sunlight, you know? It's those little things that I think make us not just good trainers, but like decent people, that it's like, it's more than the dog. It's like, I want to help you first. And obviously I want to help the dog. I don't want the dog to be euthanized or to go to a shelter or to not have any exercise or, you know, any of those things. Like, I want all of that for the dog, but if I'm not providing it and helping you first, then the dog is so secondary to all of that. The owner's not getting any help. The dog's not even in their mind at that point. You know what I mean? It's so far off.
Absolutely. All right, I got a question for you that I ask every trainer that I speak to on this. So what's one thing, and I'm going to actually make it more personal since it makes it all that way. What's one thing that you wish you knew when you were struggling with your dog that you would want to tell other owners, or that you'd want to tell yourself back then if you could?
So other owners or myself, or either?
Well, both, because it's generally the same answer, meaning like, what's the one thing that you wish owners knew, that every owner would know, or that you wish you knew, that you think could have and would have changed things, and in turn help other owners too? That's why I asked it like that.
Yeah, I love that question. That's so good, because yeah, it is going to be the same, isn't it? Really, when you think about it. Training starts from the moment you get your dog. I think, honestly, and training not in the sense of repetitions, but like your relationship with your dog starts from day one. So even if you get a dog from a rescue or from a situation that you might be initially going into it with emotional reasons of, like, you know, which I know was my like personal story. And it might be similar for you, because I know your dogs have different backgrounds and stuff like that. Is that, like, don't underestimate how much your dog is already forming their own beliefs about you from day one. So even though they might be not in the best mental space or physically not well or whatever it is, still treat them how you would treat an adult dog, especially if you're getting a puppy. A puppy is going to be an adult dog someday. So start training and setting up your lifestyle to prepare you for that. Don't wait until, you know, the dog's already lunging or already doing all of these behaviors that, you know, you're probably not even aware could happen.
Right.
Be aware of, like, there's so much more than just like bad behaviors happening outside. It's like the relationship is so important. And I think that if you haven't started that from day one, you know, just basic things in the house, then you will struggle. And it's a huge commitment as well to have a dog. I think that's something that I probably wasn't overly aware of, because Lush was like my own first dog. Like, I had family dogs and things like that, but he was mine, you know. And I think that when you have your own, I don't know, I can only speak on my perspective, but when it's sort of like looking after other people's kids, but I'm sure when you have your own kid, it's a very different experience. And it's like, I forgot my train of thought there, but it's like, be mindful that, yeah, your dog is already going to start making associations with how you are with them. You interact with them on a daily basis. So start training from day one. And that's something that I really didn't know. And I was led to believe to wait and wait and wait. And it just, you know, cycling back to the start, if you've already got a dog that's genetically not in the best shape, that has all these other things against them, they're the dogs that even more so need someone that's going to step up, even if you're not mentally in the best space or whatever it is going on in your world. Or your dog seems like a happy-go-lucky dog. Doesn't matter what the sort of situation is, start from day one. That's probably what it's saying.
I love it. I think that's literally the best thing for when you're getting a dog is understanding that the training already started, right? And it's don't wait till you so many people have gotten puppies, at least around here, right? During COVID and all of this. And I've been doing a lot of puppy FaceTime sessions, just really teaching owners how to set their dogs up for success and what training looks like from the start, actually teaching them what that looks like. And the first question that everybody asks me is, so when can we start training? And what they're always thinking of is, when can we start teaching the dog sit down, stay calm, and behavior, right?
Exactly.
And what I try to teach through that session, the FaceTime sessions that I do, is you're not training just then, right? Like, you're not waiting to teach your dog sit. You have already, if you have your dog for an hour, like you just picked it up from the breeder, from the pet store, from your rescue, wherever you got your dog, for that hour, you've already been training it. So let's learn how to do it right and what life should look like, so to really set it up for success. And guess what? It's going to be a lot easier to teach it all those behaviors that you want it to know when you've started things off on the right track already. In that training is all the time sense of training, you know?
The best situation, exactly. The best situation is a dog that doesn't know sit or down. That is, like, if that's all it was, easy, you know. And there's still going to be certain things with those dogs that some dogs struggle with down and some dogs struggle with holding a 6-day, and most dogs do. But I think that exactly, most people think it's like training is obedience, you know. What does your dog know? Like, what have you been working on? Well, he knows sit, he knows paw, he knows spin, he knows. It's like either tricks or obedience is somehow what we're being led, and it could be from Lassie and all of that Hollywood media sort of, because it's like, wow, that's a really well-trained dog. And it's like, well, when we break it down, it's like he knows 50 tricks. So yes, he is trained, but we don't know if he can actually lay down for 5 minutes without shaking or moving or any of that. I think following on from what you said, like, when you get a puppy, it's like the training side of it, there's so much that is non-verbal, like, that we teach. The crate situation, feeding, how they are with us, got thresholds, coming in and out of the crate, in and out of doorways, in and out of the car. Most of that, and I think with most of us trainers, a lot of the success is that it's non-verbal most of the time. It's like we're not adding any more energy or confusion to the dog, because words don't mean anything until there's a behavior that's associated with it. So it's just the same with when we're around our young puppies. Saying all this useless words to them doesn't mean anything. But if we hold the bowl up as they're sitting, or they might not even be sitting, but we just expect them to wait for a little bit of eye contact before they eat, that says more than, oh, my dog can sit, roll over, spin, or all of this. It's a very deeper connection than just obedience training. And I think that's where, for us as trainers, we see really profound results with dogs, is because we're working on the mind, not just the body. Not the mind in that, oh, look, they've got some puzzle toys and they're mentally stimulated that way, which I actually do love, puzzle toys and enrichment and that sort of thing. I've seen a benefit for some dogs with that. Most dogs, though, the ones that are more food motivated. But for most dogs, it's like literally laying on place for an hour is way more exhausting for them than going on a 10-mile hike. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a different thing altogether.
All right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Train your dogs from when you get them. And one more thing I'm going to add that to is, since most people already have dogs, start training your dog right now. And it doesn't mean start teaching your dog sit, like everything we've been saying, but think about everything as training and start living it, whether it's from the start of when you just get a new puppy, or whether it's from the start, meaning starting right now. But training encompasses everything, so start right away. And I think that's an awesome thing to leave everyone with, to think about, is what training really is. And it's so much more than what you think it is.
And it can be stage as well. Oh my God, have we been speaking for 2 hours?
Almost 2 hours, and I have supper and I'm hungry. So we're going to wrap it up. But I had a lot of fun talking to you. So like it went by really fast, and that's why I didn't even care. But tell everyone how they can find you, follow you, social media. Where are you?
So you can look me up at Canine Calm everywhere. So I'm Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So Instagram at Canine Calm, Facebook
Not
and
to be
YouTube.
confused with Kalm K9 Training.
I know, exactly. I've seen a few of those. So if you're ever in doubt, go to my website, which is caninecalm.com.au, and I've got links to all my social platforms that way. I kind of find that the easiest because that way it's linking to the exact page. But if you even go to my Instagram at Canine Calm, I think it's on the screen, you can DM me and I can always shoot you through my other platforms if you've got confused.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I had a great
This
time
was
chatting with
fun.
you.
Let's do it again sometime, even if
Absolutely.
it's
We will. All right,
Yeah.
guys. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to all my new Australian peeps because I saw a couple of you from Australia who were watching, so that's cool. Love you all. Hope you all have an awesome night and a good day to you Australians.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
you-
Remember to. Sorry.
I said, and you too, and be safe in the storm.
Yeah. No, it passed. We're good.
Oh,
Um,
good.
all right, guys. Let's wrap it up. Hope you all have an awesome night, an awesome day, an awesome life. Love you all. Stay kind.
Love you all. Thanks for having me, Russ.